Former Buccaneers quarterback Shaun King called Tom Brady a shell of himself. He is here on Locked On Bucs today to add some clarification to those comments, get deeper into what he really means, and he's going to make a prediction about the Devin White you're going to see playing in a Buccaneers uniform next year, what he would do with the quarterback position if he was Tom Bowles, and which quarterback in the NFL draft that is very popular these days that he is completely out on. You're not going to want to miss this conversation with Shaun King right now on the Locked On Bucs podcast.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation? Welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we thank you for making us your first listen or your first view of the day. I am David Harrison, staff writer at BucsGameDay.com, part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation. My co-host, James Yarcho, the deputy editor of BucsNation.com, part of SB Nation, is not here, but you can find him on Twitter right now at Locked On Bucs, but you can also find him at JYarcho_Bucs once he gets his access reinstated. You can find me at DHarrison82. You can find our next guest at Real Shaun King, who has some very, very interesting things to say about quarterback Tom Brady. We are going to dive into that here in just a moment. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money on your entry. First-time users, you get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. The future of linebacker Devin White, some draft quarterback analysis, and who is going to win the AFC and NFC championship games, and who's going to win the Super Bowl. All that coming up with Shaun King. But first, let's dive into his comments regarding Tom Brady. Former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback and host of VSiN Live, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The at Real Shaun King on Twitter, or at Real Shaun King on Twitter, I should say. Shaun King joining the show. Shaun, have you made any good headlines recently?
Hey, listen, David, the truth doesn't have emotions. It's just the truth, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why people have such a hard time embracing it sometimes.
No, absolutely, 100%. And for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, Shaun, obviously, you just recently did an interview with Compare.bet. And in that interview, among other things, and context is important, we can't go through the entire interview, so everybody make sure you go check it out. One of the things that is catching fire, of course, on the internet and across sites is that you said Tom Brady is a shell of himself. And I do have some follow-up questions, not to be contentious at all, but more so just kind of get some clarification. Is it something physical that you saw, like what we saw with Drew Brees kind of towards the end of his career, or is there more of a mental processing issue that you're seeing having played the position with Brady's play this season, or is it a combination of the two that's making you say that he's kind of a shell of himself?
Well, it's a combination. Football is a physical, violent game. I think I said in the interview, when you get older, it doesn't give you a 2-week notice. Age just kind of happens. Like you step off the curb and it feels like you jump 10 stories down. So it's the same thing. And you can see the erosion, especially when everything's chaotic. And, that used to be a calling card for Tom. Always cool, always calm, able to stand, in the pocket under duress and pressure and deliver the ball. And, he's just really not capable of doing that on a consistent basis anymore. I hope he didn't take it as a criticism because, he is the most accomplished, player ever to play this game of football. But,
right.
Everybody got old. There's not one great player that didn't get old. It's happened to everybody, and it's happening to Tom.
Yeah, no, very, very accurate, very accurate. And again, the context of the interview is important. Nothing you said was at least came across to me as disrespectful. Let everybody else make their own decisions as well. Brady once said, though, Shaun, this is years ago, I can't remember exact season, he was still with the Patriots, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically he said, when I suck, I'll retire. So let's take that one step further. Do you think it's time for Tom to kind of meet that end and kind of come to grips with that finality of his career?
Well, that's up to Tom. He's earned the right to do whatever he wants. My context, in my opinion, I'm a lifelong Bucs fan. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. I grew up, rooting for the Bucs. I want what's best for the Bucs organization, and I think that's the move on. I think that's the start of rebuild. That's the try and, attain some new assets, whether it be earlier draft picks, young talent, through free agency, but start rebuilding the core group of guys so that we can move into this next era of Buccaneer football.
All right. He is former Buccaneers quarterback, host of VSiN Live, Shaun King. Now, Shaun, let's say Brady does leave. Even if he doesn't retire, he goes and plays somewhere else. A lot of rumored places out there, obviously, one way or another. If you're advising Todd Bowles, I know you mentioned time to get on with this rebuild. Rebuilds can look a lot, very different in very different ways. You've seen a lot of those over the years. Sometimes they're rookies. Sometimes it's a bridge veteran into a young quarterback. Which route would you recommend Todd Bowles goes? Is there a guy out there that you kind of look at as a Bucs fan and say, that's the guy that should be leading the next year or even the next couple years of Buccaneers football?
Well, the first anytime you have an opening, I think you look internally. And only the people in that building, I know it's a lot of turnover now on the offensive staff, so you're going to have some new people, maybe not as familiar with some of those guys. But Todd has had a chance to look at Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask for, 3 years now? And listen, in 3 years, if a guy's got it, he's done enough to show you in practice that he's got it.
Yeah.
So my thing would be, if you feel like one of those guys has done enough and that you think you could build upon that, then let's get him a chance. But if you haven't seen anything beyond average, from those two gentlemen, let's move on and get something fresh in there and let's start moving towards the future. Time is a valuable commodity. It's the one thing that we don't ever get back. And I don't want the organization to take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to get back to being like a legitimate Super Bowl contender year in and year out. So if you don't think you can win a championship with Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask, and don't even waste the time, move on. Because free agent market going to have some guys out there, Gardner Minshew, Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr more than likely. You would assume that Seattle's going to re-sign Geno Smith, but I think he is a free agent as well. So there are some guys out there that are top half of the league, I think, talents that you could bring in and at least not be in a full rebuild at the quarterback position.
Don't go anywhere. We've got even more with former Buccaneers quarterback Shaun King coming up on this episode of Locked On Bucs. Today's episode of Locked On Bucs is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and we are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from your money lines to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays. I love same-game parlays. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On Bucs your first listener, your first view of the day. We will get back to our conversation with Shaun King here in just a moment. Make sure you're also checking out the Locked On NFL podcast for your daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday and Monday. Local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Back now to our conversation with former Buccaneers quarterback Shaun King. Absolutely. I think there's a way to be competitive while still trying to climb the mountain, right? Doesn't necessarily mean we're looking at a complete total rebuild or not rebuild, but tear down and all that, but potentially making some moves. There's a move that a lot of Buccaneers fans are kind of bracing for and hoping for the best, bracing for the worst, and that deals with linebacker Lavonte David. You've been around football for a long time. You understand the business side of it. You understand the emotional side of it. Lavonte has been with this franchise for a long, long time. I think most diehard Buccaneers fans, or I would say at the Super Bowl win, felt best about guys like Lavonte and Mike Evans winning a championship versus, the mercenary Tom Brady who came in to win that championship. Do you have any vibes on how do you think that Lavonte David situation is going to turn out?
It'd be interesting. There were some guys on defense that I was not happy with their performances this year. Lavonte David was not one of them. I still thought he played with the same love for the game, the same enthusiasm unknown to mankind has made him a fan favorite. So you'd like to find a way to work out an agreement where he retires a Buck. He's one of those Ring of Honor guys that you'd love to never have played anywhere else. I remember Derek Brooks at the end of his career, Saints were kind of kicking it around, do we want to bring him in? But, I think, it enhances his legacy even more that he only played for Tampa.
Yeah. No, I remember those conversations, and Bucs fans were not happy at the prospect of Derek Brooks wearing Saints colors. Absolutely. And I think that everybody is probably glad that prospect never happened. Speaking of the defensive side of the ball, Shaun, so you mentioned, that there are some guys you weren't happy with. Lavonte was not one of them. A lot of people not happy with Devin White. What are your kind of thoughts on Devin's play? The whole loafing incident, was that, again, because he kind of mentioned, my teammates know what the real story is. They know what's really happening. So is that not a lack of effort? Is there something else going on there that the non-NFL player wouldn't understand? And I guess the question that everybody's kind of looking forward to, with Roquan Smith breaking that $100 million linebacker threshold, is Devin White a top 3, top 5 linebacker that could get that $100 million contract after his rookie deal is up?
Well, Devin has been a top 3 linebacker. He was not a top 3 linebacker in 2023. So if you're the Bucs, what you have to decide is, was this year an outlier, or is this the beginning signs of a decline? I think success is harder to handle than failure. And I think what we saw with Devin this year was, I don't think he maybe handled success as well, as he anticipated. So based on what I had seen prior to this year, I would expect a all-pro type of season next year from Devin White. But again, as an organization, you're around guys every day. Maybe it was injury, maybe it wasn't. The effort thing is obvious on some plays. I didn't think he played with the same level of physicality that he had played with in years previous. But again, you get those big deals, and you get the championship, and all of a sudden you go from irrelevant to extremely popular. And what did Marvin Hagler say? It's hard to get up and go run the miles out of those silk sheets, right? So, so I mean,
no, that makes sense.
But it's a learning lesson. I think the same thing happened to Russell Wilson. He got so caught up in the new lifestyle with Sierra, the opportunity to have say-so in this organization, that, he kind of overlooked the fact that to whom much is given, much is required. Like, you got to produce, so when Devin got into the conversation of being the best linebacker, one of the top 3 linebackers in the NFL, now the scrutiny on your performance, it gets more intense, But I think he showed enough at times to think that he'll have a bounce back year next year. If the Bucs won't have any chance for success, he definitely needs to.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly flash. I mean, we've seen flashes of greatness, right? Seeing flashes of why he was a top 5 overall pick, despite the fact that he's an off-ball linebacker and all those things. So certainly hoping to see that prediction come to life in the following season. One more Brady question, really not on the field, but this one's more off the field. And I don't know if you've seen it. I know a lot of other people have. So you're in sports media and entertainment now. Obviously, you've been an NFL athlete as well. So you have a unique way of seeing this thing. And I want to kind of tap into your thought process in this. There's a video going around of Tom touring a school in Miami that his kids either go to or might be going to. What are your thoughts, first of all, of the video being taken and in that light, and then for that video to then be circulated by thankfully not every media outlet, right, but some media outlets certainly circulating that and trying to make what they make off of that?
Well, the first thing I thought was, I mean, with everything that he went through this past preseason and the way it happened and the timeline, he could legitimately just be getting down there for the first time to those new schools that his kids are in, because they were in Clearwater, if I'm not mistaken. And then when the separation happened and ultimately the divorce, they moved the wife, or the ex-wife, and the kids, I think, moved down to Miami. So he was in season at that time. So he could actually have been getting a tour of where his kids go to school now for the first time. I know the speculation is because of the situation with the Dolphins, when the alleged tampering and all of that, of course, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And with Tua battling, concussion issues, I think Tua's contract is up as well. His rookie deal, I think he's in the last year. So if Brady was going to play, that would make sense. Obviously, that's something that owner, you know, envisions in a perfect world is having Brady in a Dolphins uniform. You hear the rumors about Tom, coming here to Las Vegas, where I live at, to play with his old coordinator, Josh McDaniels. So that decision will be up to Tom. I just looked at it like, this is his first time getting to see his kids' new school. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah. Do you have any issues with people like pulling out? I mean, today's world is crazy, even in 99 and so on, like their technology was advancing, but it's not quite to the point where it is even now. Like, do you have an issue with someone, in a personal moment, pulling that cell phone out and taking that video?
What part of you thinks that Tom didn't know that video was being taken?
I mean, look, someone who walks around Tom Brady, you got to be aware of your surroundings, right? So maybe that's accurate.
You can always tell an amateur who's filming because the camera gonna be moving, the hand gonna be shaking.
Yeah.
Tom wanted that video out, and it got out.
Okay, that's a fair point. It's a fair point. So, Shaun, the NFL draft is coming up. A lot of guys looking to be the next Tom Brady or be the next, great at their position, all that stuff, just like you did again back in '99. Alabama, Bryce Young, Ohio State, C.J. Stroud, Kentucky's Will Levis, regarded highly as the top 3 quarterbacks in this year's class. Is that your top 3 as you see it as standing coming into, still early in the draft evaluation process, or do you have a different ranking for these quarterbacks this year?
Well, I haven't watched all of the guys. I have watched those 3. I've watched Anthony Richardson. Mm-hmm. So Bryce Young's a real deal.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you have tape as good as his, but you don't meet the measurables, people talk themselves out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could happen with Bryce. I don't know what he's going to measure. I could care less what he measured. Bryce Young's the real deal. Whoever selects Bryce Young's getting a bona fide, legit, elite player at the position that fits football in 2023. He can move around. He can extend plays. He's extremely accurate with the ball. He has a high football IQ. Listen, Bama's probably a 4 or 5 loss team if Bryce Young's not on that team this year. Like, he made plays. If you ever get a chance to just watch, the offensive cut-ups, I mean, they didn't have the greatest offensive line. This is probably the worst group of wide receivers I've seen Bama have in a long time. Mm-hmm. And he just made play after play. C.J. Stroud's film is super clean, almost too clean. Like, Ohio State kind of was far superior to everybody they played. And it looks like that. Like, but his ball location, his timing, like all of that stuff is elite. You kind of question what level of athlete he was, but then he kind of dispelled those myths in the Ohio State game. He's not a guy that plays with a lot of fire, so at times you wonder, is he, alpha dog, that can get into that huddle. Hey, eyes up, fellas. Hey, blast, wide bunch right. And spit it out, and hey man, get your ass to 10 yards. Excuse my language, but is he that guy that can really manage it? But I think he showed a lot of competitiveness in the Ohio State game, so that'll help him and enhance him. Now, Will Levis is a unique evaluation because, David, there are games he looks like the next coming to Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. And then there's some other games he's got complete bust written on him. And generally, when you see the elite guys, their lows aren't as low as Will Levis. So I haven't really formed a complete, concrete, definitive opinion on him because his good film is really good. He's got a quick release. He got a big arm. He's a good enough athlete. But, man, just the inconsistency. Like, if you go watch Kentucky, Tennessee this year, man, that was an all-time terrible performance by a guy people are talking about drafting in the top 10. So we'll see. I wouldn't touch Anthony Richardson. To me, Anthony Richardson is just a bigger version of Malik Willis. That'd be a late developmental guy for me. See, the problem with taking Anthony early is if he has to play early, it's the worst thing for him, and it's going to get you fired. Because he wasn't the system that he ran under Mullen and under Napier. Those aren't pro passing type systems. I mean, they're not throwing any in cuts. They're not throwing any timing routes for the most part. Everything is QB option, play action deep, screens, quick game.
Yeah.
So he has a long way to go as far as being able to anticipate, throw over the underneath coverage, under the deep coverage. Like, he doesn't demonstrate any of that kind of stuff on his film, but he's a talented guy. But you see Trey Lance. I know he's been injured, but Trey Lance was never going to work in San Francisco because of where their roster was. They have a Super Bowl roster. It's hard to bring a quarterback in that hasn't really played a lot of quarterback and think he's not going to need 2-3 years to just really screw it up.
Still more to come with Shaun King in this conversation. Don't go anywhere on this episode of Locked On Bucs. And this episode of Locked On Bucs is brought to you by Prize Picks. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, if you get it right, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including NFL, NBA, NHL, men's basketball, women's basketball, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and they're safe with fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users, you can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. The home stretch of this conversation, today's conversation, with former Buccaneers quarterback Shaun King. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious about Anthony Richardson, though. I mean, a lot of people say a very, very athletically gifted guy, very raw talent, though, needs some time to develop. You mentioned Malik Willis. That was kind of the sale on him coming out last year, is that he's going to need time to sit. The Titans kind of thrust him out there anyway and really proved everybody right that he's going to need time to really grow within the National Football League. If you're training Anthony Richardson this offseason, because obviously he wants to go as high as he possibly can and do all those things, live bullets are obviously the most valuable, but those aren't available anymore, right? So from now till training camp, you just kind of have what you have. What would you tell him that he's got to work on, that he can work on in workouts, really, to get ready for like the scouting combine and all these other showcases?
Well, the things that he does well, we don't need to work on those. Like, that was the thing that kind of I didn't like about the way Malik Willis was presented. Like, it was all about how far he can throw the ball, how fast he is. Everything was movement. Like, I would work on Anthony Richardson. Okay, listen, for the next 6 weeks, we're not leaving the pocket. Everything we're do is going to be from in this pocket. I'm going to put some barriers up, pylons and stuff. You're going to have to get used to throwing the ball from inside the pocket to all different levels of the field. If we can demonstrate that, because of the other things that you bring to the table, I mean, hell, we could end up being the number 1 pick. But I don't need to see Anthony Richardson in his private workout play out, throw on the play action, throw on the run. I know he can do that stuff. Can he sit in the pocket and throw all the routes on time in rhythm with no defense there? That's what I'll be working on.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Shaun King, host of VSiN Live, joining us here on the Locked On Bucs podcast today. Find him on Twitter at Real Shaun King, dropping a lot of knowledge. Open my eyes to some things. I've got some film. We call it film. For me, it's actually YouTube to go back and watch and look at some things. But all three of those quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson included, right? But specifically the top 3 guys, kind of hoping that they're going to be able to do what Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and of course Brock Purdy are doing this weekend at some point in their careers. And Brock Purdy is playing the NFC Championship game as a rookie on the road with Shaun King. As you know, of course, you also did that. What advice do you have for Brock Purdy going into NFC Championship weekend?
Controlled confidence. You got to be confident, but you got to be under control. You can't let any moment get you outside of the element that you need to stay in to be successful. And by that, I mean, Kyle Shanahan is a really aggressive play caller. If we don't get the look we want, you have to be willing to check the ball down. But if the look is there, you got to be confident in making a throw down the field. As a young player, it sometimes the lines get blurred on confidence and recklessness. And so when I say controlled confidence, that's what I mean. There are going to be some 3rd and long situations where, you know what, they're right in the position they're supposed to be in. Do I have the discipline to check the ball down? You know, we might only pick up 6 or 7 yards and have to punt, but that's better than me trying to force a ball into a window that's not open and it turned into some kind of turnover because he's really thrown some interceptable balls the last 2 weeks versus the Cowboys and the Seahawks, and they just haven't been intercepted. So, but he's done a hell of a job. I think if I was the 49ers, I think he's done enough to show that he's the perfect fit for what, Kyle wants to do, and he's only going to get better with experience. But, when you get on that plane to fly back to San Francisco, win, lose, or draw, you don't want to be the reason that your team lost. And you don't necessarily, you're so good around him, he doesn't have to be the reason that they won either. He just has to do his job, just stay right there in that middle, make the throws that are there. I call it hit all your layups. Make sure that, sometimes the last couple of weeks, I feel like they've been up against the play clock a couple times, getting slow, getting out of the huddle, a little too methodical. Like, I think an increase in tempo, a little more sense of urgency, getting the ball snapped. But most importantly, listen, you guys going to have teammates that got the same color jerseys that you have on. Throw it to them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Unfortunately, obviously your rookie trip to the NFC Championship game didn't go as well as everybody would hoped it had. You didn't know probably going into it that you were going to have two opponents on the field that day, not just one, the ones wearing pads. But we can't let you get out of here without making some projections. Bengals at Chiefs, Niners at Eagles. Shaun, who do you got going to the Super Bowl?
Well, I'm on the Bengals. I've been on the Bengals since week 13. I have the Bengals at 20-1 to win the Super Bowl and 9-1 to win the AFC. I think the world of Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow a cold joker. I actually would take him right now. If you gave me a franchise second have any quarterback, I would take Joe Burrow. And if you tune in to VSiN Prime Time or you follow me on Twitter, you know this about me. This isn't like Johnny come lately. Like Joe Burrow's my guy. Cool, calm, killer. So I like but then I don't want to disrespect Mahomes. So I'm not going to just presume that going to Arrowhead against Andy Reid and Mahomes is a cakewalk. And it's the first time that they've kind of been like the underdog, like backs against the wall. They've lost, 2-3 games in a row to the Bengals. Yeah. Lost to them in this game last year. So, I mean, it'll be a great game, but I'm not going to get off the Bengals train now. I'm going to stay with it. And Philly's probably the one team, talent-wise, that can match up with the Niners, like from 1 to 22. Both have outstanding offensive lines. Both have skilled playmakers everywhere. Both have accomplished, athletic, talented guys all across all three levels on defense. So that's going to be a great game. I'm going to go with Philly because they're at home. So I'm going Philly, Cincy, Super Bowl, Cincy winning it all.
There you go. Bengals over Chiefs, Eagles over Niners, just because the link. I mean, look, the link is a presence in itself. So the link is going to have an impact there. And
to all Buck faithful, never forget, we kicked that butt in the last game at Veterans, and we kicked that butt in the first game at Lincoln Field. Take that, Eagles.
There you go, Shaun King, former Buccaneers quarterback, dropping all kinds of fire here on the Locked On Bucs podcast, host of VSiN Live. Make sure you're checking that out live. Was it 9 to 12 or 6 to 9? Sorry, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. Yep, live. Again, that's VSiN Live, and then of course on Twitter at Real Shaun King. Shaun, appreciate you joining us. We'll have to have you back on very soon.
All right, David, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
A lot of fun there talking with former Buccaneers quarterback Shaun King. Hopefully you guys appreciate it or enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen, your first view of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you local insight you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. James and I will be back. You've got Evan Klosky's predictions for this weekend, Shaun King's predictions for this weekend. We will make our predictions for this weekend as well. And we'll also talk some other Buccaneers stuff. Of course, if you've got topics you want to discuss, or you want to get in on the predictions, get in on the conversations, respond to what Shaun King said about Tom Brady, Devin White, Lavonte David, Anthony Richardson, any of it, drop them in to the DMs at Locked On Bucs on Twitter or at Locked On Bucs podcast at gmail.com. For James Yarcho, I am David Harrison. Until we speak again next time, check out everything we're doing at BucsGameDay.com and at BucsNation.com. Find us on Twitter at DHarrison82, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at Locked On Bucs. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and thanks for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs.